It was a calm evening, and the little family decided to go out for dinner. The day had been long, filled with work and errands, and a quiet night at home didn't feel exciting enough. The mother thought it would be nice to treat herself and her son to a simple meal at a nearby restaurant. Nothing fancy, just a cozy place where they could enjoy good food and a little time together as they walked in. The smell of sizzling dishes and warm bread immediately filled the air. The restaurant was busy, bustling with chatter, clinking cutlery, and laughter from other families. The mother felt a small flutter of nervousness. She didn't like crowded places much, but the boy seemed excited. His eyes sparkled as he looked around, pointing at the dessert counter and the colorful menu on the wall. They started searching for a table. Most of the spots were taken, except for a few small ones in the corner and one large table near the window. The mother's eyes landed on that big table. It was perfect for them, a comfortable spot where they could sit together without feeling cramped. She felt a small relief. Maybe tonight wouldn't be so stressful after all. Just as she moved closer, she noticed something strange. There was already a group sitting there, but it looked like they were about to leave. The mother hesitated. Should she wait for them to finish? Or find another table? She wasn't sure. Her son, however, seemed to have made up his mind instantly. Before she could speak, the boy tugged at her hand and said loudly, with a tone that surprised even himself, "Mum, this table is for our family. Get outside." The words froze her. For a moment, she couldn't process what had just been said. People around glanced over, a few raising eyebrows, some smiling quietly at the boldness of the child. The mother's heart raced, part shock, part embarrassment. She looked down at her son, whose eyes were wide and serious, waiting for her reaction. The mother had always known her son was outspoken, but never like this in public. This was different. There was something confident and assertive in his voice, something that made everyone notice. She felt her cheeks flush. Was she supposed to scold him? Or was there something she wasn't seeing? Inside, she started to replay the moment in her mind. Was he trying to be funny? Was it a simple act of childish defiance? Or was there a deeper message she was missing? The atmosphere in the restaurant suddenly felt heavier, as if time had slowed down just for them. The son's expression didn't waver. He looked straight at her, as if saying, "I mean it. This is our spot. We belong here." At that moment, the mother realized this wasn't just about the table. It was about something bigger, something about family, respect, and boundaries that she hadn't thought about in a while. But she couldn't quite put her finger on it yet, as she took a deep breath. Trying to gather her thoughts, she wondered how she would handle this. Should she argue? Should she laugh it off? Or should she actually listen to what her son was trying to say? Little did she know, this moment at a simple dinner table would soon turn into one of the most memorable and emotional experiences of her life. The mother stood frozen, her mind racing. She couldn't believe what her son had just said. Get outside. She thought, her son, her little boy, was telling her off in a crowded restaurant. People were looking, and for a brief moment, she felt the sharp sting of embarrassment. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Maybe he didn't mean it the way it sounded. Maybe he was joking. She looked down at him, expecting to see a playful grin, but instead she saw a seriousness that made her pause. His small face was determined, his brows slightly furrowed, and his eyes looked straight into hers with a level of confidence that startled her. "Why would you say that?" she asked quietly, trying to keep her voice calm. The boy shrugged, as if it was obvious. "Mum, this table is for our family. Everyone else should leave." Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know whether to laugh or scold him. People around them glanced over again, some smiling, some clearly curious. She felt her face get warmer. She hadn't expected this. Her son, who usually followed her lead, had suddenly taken the reins in public, and she didn't know how to respond. She tried to think. Was this about the table? Or was it something bigger? The words seemed so simple, yet there was weight behind them. It was as if he wasn't just talking about dinner seating. He was standing up for something deeper, something she hadn't realized needed defending. The mother shifted her gaze around the restaurant, noticing the small reactions of strangers. Some were amused, some were silently impressed, but all she could focus on was her son. She remembered how he had always been protective, even in small ways, always noticing when someone was left out, always trying to make things fair. Maybe this was just another one of those moments. Still, the boldness of it all left her reeling. She had always tried to guide him, teach him manners and patience. Yet here he was, speaking his mind openly, in front of strangers. Was it rude? Or was it courage? She couldn't decide. For a moment, she wondered if she should ask him to apologize. But, looking into his earnest eyes, she hesitated. He wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He genuinely believed he was doing the right thing. And somehow, she knew there was more to this than just a simple restaurant argument. She remembered a few small incidents at home. How he would insist on sharing fairly. How he would speak up when he felt something was wrong, even when it meant correcting her. She realized that this wasn't just a random outburst. It was part of his personality. His words might have embarrassed her in public, but they were also honest, fearless, and sincere. The mother slowly sat down at the edge of the table, trying to process everything. She still felt the heat of the moment, but her confusion was now mixed with a hint of curiosity. What was he really thinking? What was he trying to teach her? The son, meanwhile, seemed completely unbothered by the attention. He folded his hands on the table and looked at her expectantly, waiting for a response. The mother knew she couldn't just ignore it. She needed to understand him, to really listen. As she took another deep breath, she realized this simple outing had suddenly turned into an important life lesson. And in that moment, she understood that this was only the beginning. There was more to come, a lesson in honesty, family, and love that she would never forget. The camera of her mind captured the moment. A crowded restaurant, a small boy with big courage, and a mother struggling between embarrassment and admiration. She knew she would have to confront her feelings soon, but for now, she simply watched, waiting for the next words to come. After the initial shock, the mother excused herself for a moment and stepped slightly aside, giving herself a chance to think. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes, replaying the moment in her mind. Her son's words echoed over and over. "Mum, this table is for our family. Get outside." At first, she had felt embarrassed, almost humiliated, in front of strangers, but now, stepping back, she began to see something different. This wasn't just a bold statement from a child, it was a glimpse into his personality, his honesty, his courage, and his sense of fairness. She thought back to the small moments that had built this boy into the person he was becoming. The way he insisted on sharing his snacks with his younger cousin, even when he didn't want to. The way he stood up for classmates who were being teased at school. The way he reminded her gently when she forgot to do something kind for someone else. He was outspoken, yes, but he was also kind, brave, and principled. A small smile appeared on her face as she realized that what had felt like embarrassment in the restaurant was actually a moment of learning for her. He was showing her something important, something she hadn't thought about in a while. Her mind wandered further. She remembered the challenges of the past few weeks. Work had been stressful. She had been tired, and her focus had been scattered. She hadn't always been patient with him, hadn't always noticed the little things he did to care for her and others. Maybe his words weren't disrespectful at all, they were a gentle reminder. A call to pay attention, to listen, to respect the feelings of those closest to us. She glanced back at him, still sitting confidently at the table, waiting. There was no anger in his eyes, just sincerity. And now, for the first time that evening, she felt a swell of pride. Here was her son, unafraid to speak his mind, unafraid to express himself. Even when it was uncomfortable for others. The mother thought about how often adults missed opportunities to learn from children. Kids had a way of seeing the world in simple, honest ways. And sometimes, their words carried lessons that adults could only understand when they paused, stepped back, and truly listened. She also realized something about herself. She had been worried about what others thought, about being judged by strangers in the restaurant. But in that moment, the judgment of others didn't matter. What mattered was the relationship she had with her son. The trust and honesty between them. With a deep breath, she walked back to the table, her heart lighter than it had been moments before. She knelt slightly beside him and said softly, "I think I understand now." The boy's eyes lit up, sensing her change in mood. He had been waiting not for a lecture or a scolding, but for acknowledgement. For her to see that he had spoken with care, even if it seemed bold. In that instant, the mother realized something profound. Life was full of these small, unexpected lessons moments that could teach patience, love, and understanding if only one was willing to pause and reflect. She promised herself that she would try to be more aware, more attentive, and more appreciative of these little truths her son shared. And so, a simple evening at a restaurant began to transform into a meaningful experience, not because of the food or the setting, but because of a small boy's honesty and a mother's willingness to see the lesson hidden in his words. She sat back in her chair, feeling a mix of emotions, pride, love, and a touch of awe. This was not just a lesson about a table at a restaurant. It was a lesson about family, respect, and the power of speaking the truth. Even when it surprises us, back at the table, the mother looked at her son. He was calm, sitting upright, waiting patiently, as if he knew she needed a moment to gather her thoughts. The restaurant noise faded into the background for her. All she could focus on was him, his small, earnest face, the seriousness in his eyes, and the confidence behind his words. "Can you tell me why you said that?" she asked softly. She didn't want to sound angry or harsh, just curious. The boy blinked for a moment, then replied clearly, "Mum, I just thought. This table is for our family. I wanted us to sit together. I didn't want strangers to take it, because it felt like ours." The mother's heart softened. She had expected a cheeky or rebellious answer, but instead, she heard thoughtfulness and care. He wasn't being rude. He was trying to protect something that mattered to him, their little family space, their connection, the feeling of being together. She smiled slightly, realizing how much she had misunderstood. The boy wasn't challenging her authority. He was expressing what mattered to him. And in that moment, she felt a wave of admiration and love for his honesty. "You know," she said quietly, "sometimes adults forget that children notice important things. Even if we think they're too small to understand. You reminded me of something very important tonight." The boy's face lit up. "Really?" he asked, a hint of pride in his voice. "Really," she said. "You reminded me that family comes first. That our little moments together are special, and that it's okay to speak up when something feels right to you." There was a pause as they both sat quietly, letting the words sink in. Around them, the restaurant continued its usual hum, but it felt like a bubble had formed around their tabula private space, filled with understanding, respect, and love. The mother realized that this small confrontation, which at first had felt like embarrassment, had turned into a meaningful conversation. It wasn't about discipline or scolding. It was about connection, communication, and learning from one another. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for reminding me how important our family is, and for being brave enough to speak your mind." The boy grinned, proud that his words had mattered. "I just wanted us to sit together," he said simply. The mother reached over and held his hand. "And we will always," she squeezed it gently, feeling a deep sense of love and gratitude for this little person who had taught her such a valuable lesson. At that moment, she noticed something else: the way he had handled himself in public. There was no arrogance, no attempt to show off. Just honesty and sincerity. She realized that courage wasn't about being loud or it was about speaking the truth, even when it might be uncomfortable. For a long while, they sat together, sharing the silence that didn't feel awkward but comforting. They both understood that this was a small, yet important, victory for their family bond. It wasn't a grand moment or a dramatic event, but it was genuine, real, and it mattered more than any fancy dinner or busy restaurant scene. As they finally ordered their food, the mother felt lighter than she had all day. The tension had dissolved, replaced by connection, understanding, and quiet pride. She looked at her son again, smiling, knowing that life sometimes handed lessons in the smallest packages, lessons about love, courage, honesty, and family. And for the rest of the evening, the restaurant wasn't just a place to eat. It became a place of reflection, of growth, and of small, unforgettable truths. The conversation with her son had left the mother with a warm, lingering feeling she hadn't expected. What had started as embarrassment and confusion had transformed into pride and love. She realized that tonight wasn't just about a table at a restaurant, it was about something far more important: family, connection, and understanding. As their food arrived, the mother noticed how happy her son looked, his eyes shining with simple joy. He had felt heard, valued, and appreciated. And that small, honest moment had brought them closer in a way that words alone couldn't capture. They began eating, laughing softly at small things, the way a waiter tripped slightly, the colorful dessert that seemed too big for one person, the playful banter between families at nearby tables. But underneath the laughter, a quiet sense of warmth filled the space between them. At one point, the mother reached across the table and touched her son's hand. "You know," she said, smiling, "I think you taught me more tonight than I taught you." The boy looked up at her with a mixture of pride and curiosity. "Really?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "You reminded me that family comes first, that speaking your mind honestly can be a good thing, and that courage can be gentle and kind, not loud or forceful. I'm proud of you." The boy's face lit up, and he smiled widely, showing a small gap in his teeth. "I'm proud of us too," he said. For a moment, they just sat there, hands touching, hearts connected. The mother realized how easy it was to get caught up in daily life work, chores, distractions, and forget these small but meaningful moments. But tonight had reminded her, it's the little things, the honest words, and the shared smiles that build the strongest bonds. As they finished their meal, the mother noticed people around them, looking at the small family with quiet admiration. Maybe they were noticing the same thing. She had the unspoken bond between mother and child. The respect, the love, that didn't need to be loud to be powerful. She didn't care about the attention. What mattered was what had happened right here, at this table, in this ordinary restaurant that had turned into a stage for something extraordinary. Before leaving, the mother asked her son if he wanted to take a walk outside for a few minutes. He eagerly agreed. Hand in hand, they stepped into the cool evening air, feeling the night breeze on their faces. She thought about how, just a short while ago, she had been embarrassed by his words. Now, she was grateful. Grateful for his honesty, his courage, and the simple lesson he had given her without even realizing it. As they walked, the mother made a silent promise to herself. She would listen more, notice the little things, and cherish these moments. Life could be busy and unpredictable, but it was these small, genuine connections that mattered most. Her son glanced up at her and said softly, "Mum, I like when we sit together like that." She smiled, feeling a rush of warmth. "Me too," she said. "Me too." And in that moment, the mother understood that this night, this small act of bold honesty from her son, would remain in her heart forever. It was more than a story about a table at a restaurant. It was a story about family, love, courage, and the small, everyday moments that make life truly meaningful. As they walked back to the car, the mother looked down at her son, smiling. The night had started as ordinary, but it had ended as unforgettable. Reminder that sometimes the smallest voices can teach the biggest lessons. After leaving the restaurant, the mother couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The streets were quiet, the night air cool and calm, but her mind was full of thoughts. The evening that had started as an ordinary dinner had turned into something much more profound. She thought about her son's words again. "Mum, this table is for our family. Get outside." At first, they had felt shocking, almost embarrassing. But now, in hindsight, they carried a weight she could not ignore. Those words were more than just a statement, they were a lesson, a reminder, a glimpse into the mind of her child. She realized that life often gives lessons in unexpected ways. Sometimes, the smallest people in our lives, the children we guide and care for, can teach us the most important truths. Lessons about honesty, courage, love, and respect. Her son had shown her that being brave doesn't always mean being loud. Sometimes it means speaking what matters with sincerity, even when it feels uncomfortable. As she glanced at him walking beside her, she saw the same spark she had always loved, the spark of kindness, fairness, and integrity. He was growing, learning, and teaching at the same time. And she understood that the role of a parent wasn't just to guide, was to observe, listen, and learn from these small but meaningful moments. She thought about all the times she had been busy, distracted, or too focused on work and daily life. How many small lessons had she missed? How many moments had slipped by unnoticed? The thought made her smile softly. Tonight, she had been given a gift, a reminder to slow down, to pay attention, and to cherish the ordinary moments that often hold extraordinary meaning. The mother reflected on how simple acts, like sharing a table or speaking one's mind, could carry such depth. It wasn't about pride, control, or appearances. It was about family, connection, and being present. It was about noticing the little things that matter most. She also realized something about herself. She had been embarrassed, yes, but she had learned humility. She had learned to step back, to listen without judgment, and to recognize the wisdom in her child's words. That understanding created a bond, a sense of closeness that went beyond the ordinary routines of daily life. The son looked up at her, smiling, and she returned the smile. In that glance, there was unspoken love, respect, and acknowledgement. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for her son, for their family, and for the simple, honest lessons life offered every day. Finally, she spoke softly, almost to herself. "Thank you for reminding me, in your own way, what really matters." Her son squeezed her hand gently. "I'm glad, Mum," he said, as they reached home and the night drew to a close. The mother carried with her a lesson that would stay forever. Family is not just about being together in the same space. It's about understanding, listening, and honoring each other's feelings. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes, it's small, quiet, and sincere. And love, true lovers, shown in these everyday moments. Often when we least expect it. She knew that this dinner, this small restaurant, this bold moment from her son, would be remembered for a lifetime. And she hoped that everyone who heard their story would see the same truth. That life's most meaningful lessons often come from the ones we love most. And sometimes, from the smallest voices with the biggest hearts. And with that thought, she smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't realized she needed, carrying the warmth of the evening in her heart forever.